Right now, a shift may be happening in your relationship that feels completely invisible, yet it changes everything about how she looks at you. You notice the quiet distance growing between you, but because there are no shouting matches or dramatic tear-filled arguments, you assume she is simply tired from work or managing a demanding schedule. The true reason you keep missing this subtle emotional departure is that female self-protection rarely looks like hostility. It looks like neutrality. When a woman begins to pull away physically, she does not always announce her departure. She quietly retreats behind a wall of polite domestic routine. This creates a deeply unsettling mystery. Is she experiencing a genuine biological shift in her sexual desire? Or is she silently protecting herself from an unspoken emotional threat? I am going to show you the precise psychological mechanics driving her physical withdrawal. On this channel, we look past surface reactions to understand the hidden emotional realities of long-term relationships. By the end of this video, you will clearly recognize the exact, subtle psychological markers that distinguish a true absence of drive from hidden sexual anxiety, and know precisely how to navigate both with complete confidence. It rarely begins with an argument or an explicit conversation. It starts with a subtle shift in how she steps away when you reach for her waist in the kitchen. You might notice how she suddenly finds a busy task to complete the moment you sit down beside her on the couch. Where she once leaned into your physical presence, she now maintains a careful, deliberate boundary. In psychological terms, this is known as somatic micro-distancing, the subconscious physical adjustments an individual makes to avoid emotional or physical intimacy without causing an overt confrontation. Her body is responding to an internal signal before her conscious mind has even formulated the words to explain it. Of course, context always matters when observing these changes in daily routine. A woman dealing with intense temporary stress, poor sleep, or physical exhaustion will naturally have less physical energy to offer. The critical distinction lies in the persistent consistency of her physical habits. When fatigue is the cause, her warmth remains intact even if her physical energy is low. When emotional withdrawal is occurring, the warmth itself turns cool and distant. The common mistake most men make in this moment is trying to fix the distance through immediate physical pursuing or verbal questioning. They ask what is wrong, which forces her to construct a logical excuse rather than address the underlying feeling. To understand why this distance forms, we first have to peel back the label that is most easily attached to it. When a woman tells you she just isn't a sexual person anymore, she might believe it entirely. But psychological defense mechanisms are design-built to feel like absolute truth. Adopting a label like asexuality offers a profound sense of psychological relief because it transforms a complex, uncomfortable emotional problem into a fixed biological reality. If her lack of desire is simply who she is, then neither of you has to face the daunting emotional work required to unpack what broke down between you. Behavioral researchers have consistently noted that individuals frequently adopt identity labels to protect themselves from feelings of personal inadequacy or relational pressure. Think back to a time in your own life when avoiding an uncomfortable truth felt much easier than confronting it directly. You might be thinking, couldn't she genuinely just have transitioned into a low desire state? And in some cases, biological factors like hormonal shifts or medications do play a real role. But here is the detail that separates a true biological absence of drive from a protective defense mechanism. A biological shift affects her internal relationship with sexual desire entirely, whereas a psychological defense mechanism is specifically designed to eliminate the anxiety she feels around intimacy with you. When the label is used as a shield, the thought of sexual intimacy creates underlying anxiety rather than passive indifference. Behind the shield of a label almost always lies a hidden form of pressure, one that rarely gets talked about in male-female dynamics. Men often assume performance anxiety belongs strictly to them. In reality, a woman's performance anxiety can be so paralyzing that avoiding intimacy altogether becomes her only safe option. From a young age, women are heavily conditioned to view their worth through the lens of physical desirability and emotional responsiveness. As time passes, changes in her body, aging, or shifts in self-perception can create a severe internal conflict. She worries that she cannot perform the role of the passionate partner you expect, or she feels deep shame about her physical appearance when exposed to vulnerable light. This triggers a well-documented psychological state called spectatoring, where an individual constantly monitors their own body and performance during an intimate moment rather than feeling actual physical pleasure. When every romantic encounter subjects her to harsh internal judgment, physical intimacy ceases to be a source of connection or relief. It becomes a stressful test she feels destined to fail. Naturally, this does not mean every moment of hesitation stems from deep body shame. Yet when you notice her turning off all the lights, avoiding physical touch unless she is fully covered, or tense during moments that require physical exposure, the pattern becomes unmistakable. The common mistake men make here is attempting to reassure her with generic compliments about her beauty. While well-intentioned, this often increases her performance anxiety because it reminds her that she is being observed and evaluated. Yet body insecurity is only the surface layer. Beneath it sits a far deeper psychological structure tied to her sense of control. For a woman, physical intimacy is not a self-contained act. It is the ultimate exposure of her emotional nerve endings. Her physiological arousal system is intrinsically tied to her perception of emotional safety within the relationship structure. When an emotional dynamic feels unpredictable, dismissive, or unsafe, her nervous system activates a subtle fight-or-flight response that directly inhibits physical arousal. In clinical psychology, this is known as neuroception, the unconscious neural process where the nervous system constantly scans the environment and relationship for safety or threat cues. If she carries unspoken resentment about household dynamics, feels emotionally unheard, or remembers past instances where her emotional vulnerability was dismissed, her nervous system registers physical intimacy as a threat to her emotional integrity. She cannot simply flip a physical switch to feel desire when her core emotional safety is compromised. You might wonder how a relationship that appears quiet on the surface can harbor such underlying threat signals. The answer lies in unaddressed microconflicts, small, unresolved moments of dismissiveness or emotional absence that accumulate over months and years. Remember what I told you at the start, that there was one signal most men not only miss, but actively misread. We are getting close to it now. When emotional safety is lacking, physical touch feels less like a warm invitation and more like an uninvited demand. Before we move to the final layer, consider how her withdrawal is often a silent protective mechanism against feeling emotionally overrun. Which brings us to the single most misunderstood signal in female psychology, the one that looks identical to indifference, but is actually a quiet plea for safety. The final signal isn't about physical desire at all. It is about her unconscious fear that giving you her body means surrendering the last piece of autonomy she has left. In many long-term relationships, a woman gradually takes on the mental burden of managing emotional atmospheres, domestic logistics, and family needs. Over time, she develops a profound sense of emotional fatigue. In psychological literature, this state is recognized as emotional engulfment, a deeply unsettling feeling where an individual feels their independent identity being slowly absorbed by the relentless emotional needs and expectations of another person. When she reaches this threshold of emotional overload, physical intimacy no longer feels like a shared moment of pleasure. It feels like one more item on a long list of duties where she must give away a part of herself to satisfy someone else. Refusing physical touch becomes her absolute final line of defense to preserve her remaining sense of personal boundary. This is why her physical withdrawal often feels so sudden and immovable. It is not that she lacks the capacity for passion. It is that her psychological boundary system is desperately attempting to shield her core self from total exhaustion. Context is essential here as well. A woman who maintains a rich, independent emotional life outside her relationship rarely experiences this specific fear of engulfment. But when her entire world has contracted around meeting external expectations, withholding her body becomes her only remaining method of asserting control over her own life. The critical mistake most men make when encountering this wall is pushing harder for emotional answers or physical closeness, which directly validates her deepest fear of being engulfed. Once you see this dynamic clearly, the path forward shifts from trying to fix a problem to changing how you hold space. When you step back and view these behavioral patterns together, a fundamental psychological truth emerges. Female sexual withdrawal is rarely a simple loss of biological interest, but rather an intricate, unconscious defense system designed to protect her emotional autonomy, manage hidden performance anxieties, and guard against feeling emotionally overwhelmed. When a woman pulls back physically, her behavior is not a random event or a personal rejection of your worth. It is an internal signal that her emotional safety reserve has run completely dry. You no longer need to exhaust yourself overanalyzing every subtle shift in her daily mood or searching for quick fixes to force physical closeness. True, lasting physical attraction cannot be demanded or negotiated. It naturally reappears when you create an environment where she feels completely safe to step out from behind her psychological defenses without fear of judgment or engulfment. By quietly demonstrating calm emotional stability, respecting her boundaries, and reducing the implicit pressure in your daily interactions, you give her the necessary emotional room to feel her own genuine desire once again. Have you ever noticed a time in your relationship where physical distance was actually a reaction to unspoken stress or fear rather than a lack of affection? Share your thoughts in the comments below, as I personally read through your experiences to help guide our upcoming discussions. Subscribing to the channel ensures you will continuously gain deep, practical insights into female emotional dynamics that allow you to navigate your relationship with quiet authority and clarity. In the next video, we are going to look at how to tell if her physical distance is temporary emotional fatigue or a permanent loss of attraction, and the exact signs that reveal the difference.